Welcome to the first Club 30 webinar. We've got over 50 members now. Unfortunately, at the moment, it seems to be school holidays / everybody on holiday at the moment. So we do have another event, actually in-person event on the 19th of July. So make sure when you see that, turn up. It will be in London, and it will most likely, I believe, be in Honey's offices. So it will sort of be just a networking for maybe an hour and a half. And then we can pop to the pub after, which is next door, and just all have a chat. So make sure to look out for that. Today we do have a great host. We've got Chris Simmance from the OMG Center, who's going to share his invaluable insights and expertise to help you tap into your own leadership potential. The OMG Center is actually one of our more recent members, so I thought I'd just give a small insight. I'm sure he will as well. But the OMG Center has a clear focus to help agencies to grow and prepare themselves for future sale. Chris does have a team of consultants who are experienced with all the tools that an agency requires to hit its targets for the future. So this includes things such as staff coaching, leadership and management skills, and overarching mentoring across the business. So I will pass it over to Chris now. Big thanks to you for coming today, Chris, as well. So I'll pass it over to you and let you get on.
Wonderful. Hello, everybody. I've recognised a couple of faces from a couple of the meetups. Jake in particular, I think I've seen you at all of them, which is either very good or very bad. So I don't know if am I all in one screen for everyone there? Yeah, I am now. Cool. So hopefully this will be something which will kind of start some thinking off, as opposed to make you expert leaders, primarily for the purpose of it's really difficult to do this right, and in half an hour hopefully don't expect to be experts. So without further ado, any questions throughout, I'm happy to answer, by the way. So is that better for you guys, Leon, or would you prefer at the end? How does it normally work from your point of view?
It's whatever you prefer, really. We can do questions at the end, or if somebody does have a question to intervene, then I'm sure.
Yeah, cool. Hope for the vast majority of this, it's conceptual stuff. There's a few bits to think about and a few things that you'll probably take away. But for the most part, as you go, if there's anything that piques your interest that you want to talk about even in a bit more detail, then shout right at the time. Otherwise, happy to help afterwards. Grab me at any of the 6 p.m s, grab me online, however you want, in a polite way, consensual way as well, for sure, please. Thank you very much. So we're going to talk about unleashing your leadership potential today. The first question, most of you who haven't met me, is probably, who the heck's this guy? So just so it helps hopefully frame some of this, I built 2 digital agencies. I've exited one of them. I pivoted the other into a consultancy, which is still going, that I get to do nice things with charitable enterprises and things like that versus running an agency. I wrote a book on digital agency leadership. I'd like to claim it was definitely the leadership book because it's not been launched yet. But once this webinar's over, if you wanted a copy, please give me a shout, because I'm happy to send you a link once the proper launch is done. That's what it looks like. I founded the OMG Center to help people grow, people who work in agencies in particular. Most of this is through long-term vision, long-term thinking, and a lot of that is underpinned by leadership. Essentially, the whole get more time, get more money with less stress, growth in an agency at all levels essentially boils down to this. You can be the leader of an enormous agency or a leader of a department in a large agency, and you still want more time to yourself, more money for yourself and maybe the agency, and certainly less stress. And good leadership comes from these kinds of things. We're going to talk about understanding leadership to start off with, and go from there. So the core components of leadership, hopefully none of this is a revelation, but if it is, see me after class. So Empathy is absolutely essential. If you don't have empathy for the people that you're leading, it's very hard to understand why they don't listen, why you are finding it hard to get the most and the best out of them, why they leave the agency, why it's hard to get them to do their job as well as you can get them to do. Respect is absolutely key. Respect and empathy go kind of hand in glove. If you don't respect the people you're working with, above, below, and beside you, it's going to be really hard to promote decent leadership in your business. Trust is absolutely essential. Trust comes from a variety of ways. You can trust someone's competency, but in this aspect of thinking, I'm thinking more along the lines of from a leadership perspective, you trust someone's ability to listen, understand. You trust someone to be vulnerable when they need to be. You can be trusted to be vulnerable when you need to be. Gone are the days of like the sort of the fake stoic leader who never shows any kind of emotion. If you're having a hard time, don't go telling everyone that the agency's on fire. But if you're having a hard time, be honest and transparent in the best way that you can. Integrity is essential. If you don't have integrity, it's very hard to get by in life in many senses unless you've already got lots of money. Integrity is absolutely wildly essential. If you don't have integrity, it's very hard to get trust. It's very hard to give trust. If you don't have integrity and trust, you can't respect people. And if you can't respect people, you probably aren't giving them the empathy they need in order to be able to understand what they're saying. And consistency throughout, excuse me, consistency throughout is, again, a massive core component. If you are an inconsistent leader, people do not know how to talk to you. They do not know what to expect from you. And expectation setting is at the forefront of leadership from a performance management perspective. Leadership is the ability of an individual or a group of individuals to influence and guide followers or other members of an organization. That's the Google definition, or it was when I Googled it last. Someone might have usurped that top position, but essentially it makes sense that leadership is the ability to influence people. It isn't telling people what to do. You've got to do that, though, whilst maximizing the performance. You've got to maximize performance whilst minimizing friction. You have to have clarity because a confused mind doesn't buy. And you're selling a vision as a leader. You're not selling do this, do that, or you shouldn't be. You're selling this is where we're going. Come along with me. That's real leadership. If you sell a good vision, you have to be clear. People have to buy it. But it's then the challenge to make sure that people do the work consistently well, which is performance management. But again, you end up in digital agency land where there are lots of frictionful moments. Friction comes from clients. Friction comes from changes in the sector. Friction comes from a huge amount of different places. But if you're setting the tone, setting the vision, and having people follow you, and you're being clearly consistent along the way, the friction is minimized. I love this way of saying things. A good manager does things right. A good leader does right things. As the leader, you have to set the tone. You have to set the narrative. You have to be the honest, consistent person that does things right. You can do things right as the manager. You can, as the leader as well, you can do things right. Literally delivering your work right is fine, but a good leader does right things. You set the tone. So just to create some disambiguation, leadership is coping with and guiding people through change. It is motivating people and maintaining traction. It is setting the tone and direction within your area of leadership. So if you're right at the top of the business, you need to set the tone and direction of the entire business. If you're a head of department or a director of a department of some sort, you should be setting the tone and the direction within that department, within the alignment of the core tone and direction. You can't be a good leader if you're not setting the tone, if you're not setting the direction that people are traveling in. It's very hard to be the captain of a ship if you don't know where you're going. Leadership is not, though, and I'm sure you're going to recognize an awful lot of your bad previous bosses in this, being super busy. If you're super busy running in and out, answering the phone, being in meetings and all that sort of stuff, that's not leadership. That's just bad time management. Telling people what to do is a version of leadership, but it really isn't leadership. That is just bad delegating. Bad delegating is bad. If you don't delegate properly, as they say in South Park, you're going to have a bad time. Leadership isn't just a title that demands respect. You really have to earn the respect of leadership. Like I said, leadership is setting that tone and direction. If you just say, I'm the leader now, you have to follow me, then you're going to be a really bad leader, and it's going to cause an awful lot of problems. There are an awful lot of different types of leadership, though, which is something which I think we'll talk about in a minute, but you need to kind of reflect on who you are and where you're going in order to be the right leader. So to find your leadership style, we should probably talk about the typical types of leadership first. Again, you're going to recognize some previous bosses, some current bosses, things like that. You might recognize yourself in some of these as well. First and foremost, you have autocratic leadership, and it's just because it's alphabetical, it's at the top. Autocratic leadership is essentially you say, they do. Seems nice and simple. Hopefully it's nice and simple. Autocratic leadership doesn't have debate, doesn't have questions and answers. It is a list of tasks. It is that, and that is it. You're not giving anyone an opportunity to have a say. There is no vision. There is no shared purpose. There is a single file, follow behind me or else. Democratic, however, is you say, we discuss, they do. So you say what you want to be done. We as a team will discuss how to do it. Then they, as the team, will do it. Again, relatively simple, but it gets buy-in. It allows for the thing you say to modify slightly if there's a better way of doing it. It allows for people to trust you. And it really does kind of open the door to... it allows for inconsistency if you let it, because there's too many cooks in the room. But as long as you're managing the types of things that are discussed, then you can get the outcomes you want, and people will follow you. Transformational leadership is a very difficult thing to get right. Transformational leadership is something which you kind of have to aspire to. Sometimes you will do really, really well because of the type of person you are. But for the most part, transformational leadership is quite closely focused around change. It's quite closely focused on getting an awful lot out of a group of people in a long period of time. You sell the idea, you sell the vision, they buy the vision, they buy the idea, then they get on with it. Transformational leadership would be akin to a team that are poorly performing. The boss leaves, a new boss comes in. That boss sees that there's an awful lot of things that are wrong in terms of the dynamics of the team. They then set a nice vision, things move forwards, and everyone wins long term. But transformational leadership is very hard as a short-term way of doing things. Transactional leadership, however, is I say, you do, for reward or else. I've written these as kind of algorithmic kind of if this then that statements, because it makes a lot of sense to keep them nice and short and sweet. But I tell you what to do, you go away and do it. You get a reward if you do it, or bad things happen if you don't. Transactional leadership, carrot and stick. Most of the work that you would do day to day that is delegated is implicitly transactional, unless there is a vision part behind it. If you give someone a task to do and you delegate it properly, the chances are it's realistically transactional leadership, unless it is a large long-term project, and that would be more transformational. It's almost always connected to performance, bonuses, etc. There's some bad leadership styles, though, one of which we've already mentioned. Autocratic is terrible. In the long term, it will harm the business. However, if there are things which need doing, which do not need discussion and do not have a long-term bad impression on teams, they will not mind if you are autocratic at times. So this is the thing that needs doing. Everyone implicitly agrees. Everyone knows it's the right thing to do. They're not going to go, it's a bad leader. autocratic has its merits at times. I think laissez-faire leadership style is appalling, but some people would think it's great. If if you're a crypto bro in your beanbag office, you might think that's fine. If you've got bags and bags of money, it's probably fine because you can deal with all the cash flow issues. But a laissez-faire leadership style realistically says, here's where we're going. You kind of know what you're doing, guys. Get on with it. If it doesn't go well, we'll work it out. It's for the most part in digital agencies, it just physically can't work. And I suspect you've all probably had a leader or a manager in the past that's kind of been a bit seemingly very chilled. The one-to-ones and things like that don't happen that often. If they do, they're kind of just chats. Laissez-faire management style is bad for people. Laissez-faire leadership style is a killer. Narcissistic leaders cause a ton of problems. A narcissistic leader that you will all have heard of will be someone like Hitler. Hitler was a lovely version of a narcissistic leader. You get everyone in your inner circle beating to the sound of your drum. You make people like what you are, not what you do, and then you will get what you want out of those people. It's not the ideal that you want to focus on. What that causes is a lot of infighting. It causes people to work for their own gain, so that the person that's at the top gets what they gets the pat on the back that they feel that they deserve. Okay. To find your leadership style, there are several ways of doing this. Firstly, it feels difficult to do this, and I wouldn't just say you go away and sort of talk to people directly about it straight away, but you get feedback from your teams. You don't say, what kind of leader am I? You say, like, in a similar kind of vein to like a bit of a one-to-one that you would have with them, where you say, here's the feedback about your performance. You would ask them about feedback from your performance. You wouldn't open the door to loads and loads of criticism, because it would probably be a very long meeting for both parts. But if you are asking your teams for feedback, which are the curious kinds of questions like, how do you feel when I delegate things to you? Do you need more from me or less from me? When things are timely, time-based, is there a better way that I can communicate with you? And if they don't think that there is, or they completely agree with everything you're saying, you may well accidentally be being too autocratic and they're afraid to say anything. If they give you some nice, honest feedback, then that will help you to learn kind of what leadership style suits you best. Get mentorship, cough, cough, splutter, splutter, OMG Center provide this. So getting mentorship, whether it be from someone in your business or whether it be from a friend, mentorship from another leader in another organization, or even, like I say, OMG Center style paid for mentorship is a great way of doing this. The last thing that you want to do is a full day training course where you tick a bunch of boxes and learn to be a leader, because you can't be taught to be a leader. You kind of have to learn it as you become one. You're learning to be a leader by doing. So if you learn leadership from talking to your team about how your behavior is working, then you'll learn better than a checkbox. If you get mentorship, you will be learning on the fly with things that are coming up at the right time. It's very difficult to just read a book. I mean, I've written the book because, why not? But if you're just ticking off boxes, reading a book, anything like that, you're going to find that you don't pick up as much when the time comes to use it. Self-reflection is a really important part of leadership anyway. Whenever you do any performance management, you should be self-reflecting about the way you delivered the expectations. Whenever you deliver some delegated work, you should be reflecting on how you did it, and then at the end of it, how the work was done is essentially a reflection on how you delivered the delegation. Self-reflection will help you learn, again, whether or not your leadership style is right or whether it is wrong. If you constantly find you're hitting roadblocks, you've either got a very wrong team or you've got the wrong leadership style, and you need to then address it. If you feel like it's definitely your team and you've got a large enough team, it might well still be you though, because if you're surrounded by people that are bad, it might well be you. Online quizzes, I'm not saying go on like a what kind of leader am I BuzzFeed quiz or something like that. Ask me at the end, and I can send you some links to some good ones. Most of the best ones are kind of paid. They're like between $20 and $50. They're very similar to like a Myers-Briggs style type thing, but it helps learn what kind of leadership style might be ideal for you, based on your personality traits and things like that. Journaling depends on who you are and how you feel. Journaling is a really good way of assessing from a self-reflection point of view how things are going. But if you notice that you're saying the same things an awful lot about people and about people you're leading and the teams you're working with when you're when you're reading your journal back, then you start to learn, I am a certain type of leader. It is not a bad thing if you are a transactional leader, as long as you still have a vision for the business, a focus on where you're going, the right shared set of values. You can still be transactional. But if you are consistently autocratic all the time, it's going to probably mean that team will not stay around for very long. So to develop your leadership skills, there's a few things which you can do pretty well, pretty quick. First and foremost is listening. I know listening sounds really bloody obvious, but most people don't really listen properly. Listening is, there are questions in listening. It is not just nodding and hearing things. You ask lots of questions. Listening is the tool which you use in order to get as much information as possible. Getting as much information as possible gets you to understanding. Asking lots and lots of questions, asking critical thinking questions, asking curious questions whilst you listen to the answers properly allows you to understand. First, understand in order to be understood. You cannot give people a delegated task if you don't understand the person, the situation, the traits, their ability, the knock-on impact to them of some of the things that you might be asking them to do. So first, seek to understand before you can be understood. It is absolutely essential. Clarity is key here. If you are unclear about what you want from people, you cannot expect them to follow you understand what you're trying to get, understand your expectations. If you are not clear, they will not understand. If you are not clear, they will get confused. If they get confused, they will not buy your vision, your focus, where you're going. And I've said it before, but just for consistency, you should be developing your consistency. If you think about the types of things that you do in the business from an expectation management and a leadership point of view, you'll always be delegating things. You should always be talking from a point of view of accountability and responsibility. You should always be talking about delegation, and the language that you use consistently with your team will ensure that the right things are clear with people all the time. If they do not know, where you're going with something because you're inconsistent with how you behave with them, then it's going to be really, really hard for them to fully understand what the end game is, what's the goal of all of this work. If one day you come in and you're really happy and chirpy and you give everyone high fives and you're the really friendly person, and they think that this is the best day ever, but they don't get any delegation work from you, and the next day you're really miserable and you delegate a lot, they're going to think every time that you delegate something you're in a mood. Consistency is absolutely key. Clarity is absolutely essential. If you do not show that you understand the people, the situations, the traits, the issues, the workload, then you haven't listened to them and you haven't kind of listened to the tempo of the business. Something that I found really hard running agencies was letting go. And I'm sure a lot of you guys, no matter what level of what business you're in, will find this at certain points where you kind of go, well, I can definitely do it better than they can, so I'll just do it. You need to be able to let go, because a leader doesn't do the things, the leader does the things right. You can't not let go of stuff. You have to allow an opportunity for someone to get it wrong. Otherwise, they're never going to learn. They'll resent the fact and ultimately them for you doing a lot of their work. You've got to be able to trust, and like I said, trust isn't just about trusting their skill. It's also about trusting that they will tell you when they need help, that they will tell you when they are going to when they are feeling vulnerable, anything like that. I've found this one really hard. 80% is good enough. You're the expert. You set the tone. You built the SOPs. Maybe running the business. Maybe you've worked in that sector or that role for a very long time. No one will ever be as good as you are because you are you. So anyone you delegate to, your expectations internally should be that it will be about 80% as good as you can do it. 80% should be good enough though to go out to the client or go internally somewhere else. It doesn't work though if at any point you get emotional. Emotional intelligence is very different to being emotional. If you're having a bad day, that's fine, but just don't take it out on the people because that's a bad leadership trait. If you have someone who's consistently not performing and you're emotional with when you performance manage them, they're not going to listen or trust you. They're not going to care. None of it works if you don't have a long-term vision, though. If you don't know where you're going, how can you lead people anywhere? If you don't have a vision that anyone understands, you haven't been clear and consistent, and then it means that everything you delegate to them just feels arbitrarily decided. It doesn't work if you don't hire properly. If you don't hire people that are connected to your long-term vision, if you hire people emotionally, if you hire people who you haven't personally had some kind of connection to, whether it be in an interview stage or personally, you're not hiring the right people. It's going to be very hard to get everyone who is randomly different to you to follow the beat of your drum. So a few key things to take away, super simple things. Know yourself, know thyself, be yourself. If you don't know yourself, you can't be yourself. And if you are not yourself, then you're inauthentic, and inauthentic people are very transparent leaders. They become very easy to spot. It's very tiring to fake it all the time. A confused mind doesn't buy. So therefore, consistency is essential. Consistency is essential, everybody. We're here to help if you need it, though. Get your vision, your values, and your focus sorted. Get a strategy in place. Mentor your team. Get mentorship for yourself. Find the right training. Read the right materials. But you can't learn to be a leader off the back of a book. You can read a book. You can learn the concepts and things, but you can never learn to be a leader without actually leading. And that is a big factor around the whole letting go aspect of it all. And that's it. You're now professional leaders, I think, maybe.
Thank you, Chris. That was great. That was brilliant. I'll just open the floor up then. Does anybody have any questions whatsoever for Chris? As well, we're all amazing leaders now, so I don't know if you will. But
Professional. There's probably no questions.
if anyone does have any questions, obviously now is the time to ask.
I've got one. So you mentioned that it's important to understand your own leadership style. Does that mean that no matter what your natural leadership style is, you should be trying to dial that up? So in that sense, there's no wrong way. You just need to learn what your natural stance is and adjust.
Yes, within a tolerance. If you're a really narcissistic person, then don't dial that up. But equally, you've got to balance that against that that authenticity. So you can't be a good leader if you aren't a good person. So that kind of lends itself to dial it up if it's a good trait. If you find it really hard to understand other people's perspectives, or you find if you find it really hard to not judge things that other people say or do, then the thing that you would dial down in that respect is that kind of negative aspect, but you would use those things as ways to learn how to learn more empathy or better listening skills, because like I said a minute ago, if you don't understand people, they can't understand you.
Thank you.
Nice. Does anybody else have any other questions before we wrap it up?
Hopefully I'll be able to see you all in person at a real life Club 30 at some point. So you're more than welcome to grab me for anything in between then, though.
Perfect. Right. Well, thank you very much then, Chris. That's perfect. If you did want to plug your if you wanted to plug your book, I believe, right at the end.
I did it like 5 times in the thing.
Yeah, I know.
I thought I'd get as much mileage out of it as possible, Leon. So
No, of course.
the book's gonna be available digitally. If I really like you, I'll give you a hardback copy as well. It's free. The idea of the book is to be essentially a guide for whenever there's a situation that comes up that you need kind of the conceptual how to, or the conceptual what the heck is this that I'm facing type of thing. It's not supposed to turn a manager into a leader. You can be a great manager and a terrible leader no matter what training you get. So don't buy the book, just get it for free.
Perfect. Right, we'll link that in the follow-up email as well for yourself. But thank you everyone for coming. As I mentioned, we will have that other event in July, so you'll see that come out soon enough via an email. And I'll probably pop it in the WhatsApp chat. If you're not in the WhatsApp chat for whatever reason, drop me an email. I can put you in there as well. We do update in there as well. So thank you guys for coming, and I'll see you soon.
Everyone.
Thank you.
Nice to see some of you for the first time, and obviously multiple times after that.